Hi guys, this is Daniel Patterson. I'm here to talk to you guys about sustainability in Phoenix. So sustainability has become a hot button topic in recent years. There have been a lot of campaigns to encourage people to turn off their lights and take shorter showers and to carpool to work, but these are often not enough. In recent years, Phoenix has received a great deal of criticism for its lack of sustainability, despite the increase in environmentally friendly cars, solar panels, and xeriscaped yards, which are those yards you see that are only the rocks and the cacti. The idea with those is that they don't require any kind of irrigation. So, despite all of this, in October of 2014, Andrew Ross labeled Phoenix the world's least sustainable city. In 2006, Simon Winchester claimed on NPR that Phoenix should never have been built because there's no water there. And in 2011, Stockholm Environment Institute labeled Phoenix's water consumption as unsustainable. So first, let's talk about these claims and examine how sustainable is Phoenix really as a city. So actually, despite their claims, Phoenix emits 35% less than the average city in America. The reason for this is twofold. The first is that it takes more energy to warm something up than it does to cool something down. And here in the desert, there's not a lot of interest in warming things up, so we actually use less energy than other cities that are trying to keep themselves warm. The other reason is that we actually don't have a very big infrastructure for big and heavy machinery, and that's responsible for a lot of cities' emissions. And because we don't have that, we're not emitting that. The next is that all cities import. And so while there's a lot of criticism for our city for taking in water from outside sources, it's not uncommon, and in fact it's necessary for all cities to draw resources from their surrounding areas. It would, for instance, be ridiculous for us to assume that a place like Seattle would create all of its own copper or all of its own steel. And it's similarly ridiculous for us to assume that someplace like Arizona is going to supply all of its own water. Water is just like any other resource, and we can't import it. And staying on the topic of water, Arizona has also seen a shift from groundwater to surface water, which is the water that we import. And while it might not seem as sustainable to import water, actually groundwater is a non-renewable resource, whereas the surface water that we are importing is a renewable resource. So although it's a little bit counterintuitive, it is actually more sustainable for Phoenix to import its own water. That being said, Phoenix does face a number of problems, so let's go ahead and look at what those are. So first of all, South Phoenix has been labeled America's dirtiest zip code. The reason for this is that South Phoenix is actually responsible for 40% of the city's emissions. The reason for this is that there's a great deal of poverty in South Phoenix, and it's also a very congested area. And so the combination of having a very congested area with a lot of people who don't have access to technologies like solar panels or more energy efficient cars, or even just daily appliances that we take for granted as being extra energy efficient, they don't have, and so their emissions tend to be much, much higher. The other problem is that we have a dependency on power plants, and so despite all of our solar energy that's readily available here, we are still using power plants. So what has been proposed to counteract this? Well, Mayor Gordon has proposed a 17-point plan that he plans to take to the Federal Review Board to see if he can get funding for $1 billion in order to input solar panels in all of the city's buildings. He also wants to use only solar energy to heat water in city buildings. In addition to that, the plan is to create Arizona's first entirely solar power plant and to increase public transportation, so to expand the light rail system to try and reduce the amount of emissions from cars on the road. While this plan will do a great deal to benefit the city of Phoenix, it does have a downside in that it costs $1 billion, and once the federal funding is gone, Phoenix is potentially going to be left with an infrastructure that it can no longer support or will be very, very expensive to support. So while this plan has a lot of upsides, it has a lot of drawbacks as well. So instead, it might be useful to examine some of the smaller, more conservative plans that we can implement many of which can be implemented by the downtown campus. So what can we do here at the downtown campus? First of all, we can install solar panels in the parking lots. This is something that Arizona State has already begun doing in its Tempe campuses. If you go to the parking garages there, you'll see them. In addition to making students happy by providing shaded parking, they are able to contribute about 33% of the energy required to run that building. So they provide a great amount of power. The downtown campus can also save on energy by switching to more online classes. By doing this, they're going to cut on the amount of electricity they have to use to power the rooms and to cut down on the amount of air conditioning that they'll need, which can be very expensive and energy costly in the summer. By only doing online classes, they will also reduce the amount of emissions that students will have in coming to class. Of course, not everyone can learn in an online setting, and not all classes can be implemented in an online setting. So ASU can further reduce its carbon emissions by switching those classes to night classes in the downtown campus. In doing so, they'll run their classes the time of day where it is most energy efficient to cool the classrooms. And so even though it won't stamp out their carbon emissions as much, they're going to see a reduction. So although Mayor Gordon's $1 billion plan is going to have a great deal of benefit, I would recommend that we start here at the downtown campus, implementing some solar panels, online classes, and night classes to cut our own emissions. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in reading more about the topic, I provided a list of my sources for further reading. Thank you.